Hello, Kathy. Can you hear us?
Hello, good morning. Yes, I can hear you.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so colleagues, we can start letting everyone in, and we'll start um, maybe 10, like 1 past 10, so that everyone has a chance to join. Okay, so from now on, we are live.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Miguel Vidal-Bové, and I'm a policy analyst and the
Dzień dobry
coordinator of this
wszystkim.
project at the OECD
Bardzo
Center for Entrepreneurship, SMEs, Regions, and Cities. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to this official launch of the next series of the deliverables for this project called Enhancing Regional Access to and Performance in EU Funds and Initiatives, which includes today the launch of the recommendations report, the action plan, strategic action plan, and the implementation roadmaps. As you may already know, this project comprises the four regions: the Brussels capital region in Belgium, Silesia in Poland, Thuringia in Germany, and Wallonia also in Belgium. This is a project that is funded by the European Union via the Technical Support Instrument, and it's implemented by the OECD in cooperation with the European Commission Task Force for Reform and Investment, SG Reform. So let me start with three important housekeeping points. First, please keep your microphones off unless you really need to speak. You can keep your video on if you wish. There is interpretation for English, French, German, and Polish. You can switch the languages by clicking on the menu at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So please note that the speakers may change languages quite frequently. And there will be some time as well at the end of this event for an interactive Q&A with the audience. So please do not hesitate already to share your comments, your questions via the chat function as we go along with the different presentations. Now, today we have quite a packed agenda ahead of us. So briefly, let me go through it. We will start with some opening remarks from the European Commission and the OECD. After that, the OECD will present the four regional chapters, the four regional deliverables that we have prepared. We will present for 10 minutes, and then we will give the floor to the region for a reaction. Once all regions have reacted, the OECD will also provide a summary presentation or an overview of the main lessons learned across all the four regions. And then we will open the floor for the two Spanish regions that were visited in January by the four participating regions in the framework of a TAIEX funded study trip. And also we will open the floor for the observer countries here present today for a reaction, and then we will open the Q&A. So without further ado, let me just give the floor to the first speaker today, Mr. Florian Hauser, Deputy Head of Unit at SG Reform at the European Commission. Thank you for being with us. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Michael. Good morning, dear colleagues. Good morning to the colleagues from the regions and our partners in the OECD. I'm very happy to join you here from almost sunny Brussels. And as Michael said, I'm from SG Reform. This is actually a task force for reforms and investments, and we work a lot on this. And what we have learned is really that reform and investment goes together. So we are working here with you, thanks to your inspiration to submitting this very interesting project. And of course, we want to help you that you get the most out of available EU funding in the present and in the future. So to maximize your, what we call absorption, to actually use the EU funding and use it also effectively. So first of all, you have to be able to use it, but also how do you get the most value added from it? And I think this is really important now and in the future. If you read the news, we live in difficult times, and we have to build regions and countries that are also resilient. You will have noticed that the energy prices are going up again. So, for example, we have to see how can we change our energy mix, be more sustainable, and reduce our dependence on oil and traditional fuel that is increasingly part of our growing risk matrix, and we have to help us in that sense. So the EU funding can also help us to build more resilient economies and societies. Also in your regions, you will see, we have to invest in competitiveness, but we need also to have the right structures and processes that we have a business-friendly environment. We also have in many of the regions challenges with demography. So how do we manage a smooth transition to an aging society? So there are many tasks at hand. So it's not enough to spend the money, but also to invest in the right things to build a more resilient and more prosperous future economy and society in your regions and across Europe. So this, in the past, obviously EU funds is not something new. You had it for many years, and there's sort of certain habits in the legacy, and the challenge I think with EU funding is there's a lot of sort of the legacy subsidies. Oh, here the beneficiaries, they always got the money, and of course there is a social component that we support, small companies and small beneficiaries, but we also need to reflect: is that sustainable? Does that contribute to building a better future, or is it just something that we do because we're used to it? So I'm very excited that we have now come to the part of the project where we go to the action and action and recommendations. The challenge is, of course, to put these actions into practice. So I really want to see how you work on this, and we obviously offer our support for you in achieving this. It will be more important even as we look to the next financial framework of the EU, because this will focus even more on performance and also on reforms. So I hope that this project will also help you to prepare for the next financial framework. Now, talking just a bit what I think are the three key issues that most regions and countries face, and I hope we can work on this. One is fragmentation. Everybody operates in their silos. So if we want to do better in the future, we have to effectively cooperate better. And so I think there are some running themes also from the recommendation reports on that. So reduce fragmentation, increase strategic cooperation, work together, and we'll all do better. The next, I've already mentioned, we have to be more strategic, and that means let's invest in future technologies and future economies. So I think energy is just a really, really big topic now, but also digital transition, and that's actually my third point. So we need to work with data. We have so many, because of the fragmentation, all the three are interlinked, because we have so many small islands of institutional operation, and they also have data islands. Sometimes they're not even digitized. And if we don't make the data flow, we cannot use better data to give us better information to make better decisions. And so we have to invest in digitalization and data interoperability, and that will help you on the regional level to make better investment decisions, but also to provide better services. Yeah. Just an example, if you have, let's say, your regional transport network, do you know who goes on which routes and where you need to invest more and where maybe you don't have a need, and so on. And so, reduce fragmentation, be more strategic, and work, make the data flow. And that is a general quite good investment advice. And every region will be totally different. You have different needs in all the details, but there are some of these common themes that we all face. And because of the common challenges we have, it's so interesting that we have the different regions work together and learn from each other. And I'm so happy also to have our colleagues from the Spanish regions, from the TAIEX support to learn. And I think that is the best in the European spirit. Let's work together and let's be better together. And with that, I wish you a successful meeting and a successful project. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hauser, for excellent introductory remarks. I think we've noted down these three key messages that you wanted to deliver on the fragmentation, on more strategic alignment, and also evidence-based, let's call it evidence-based investment, right? With the data that you alluded to. Very important points, and I think these words will come in the several outputs that we will present today. But for now, I wanted to give the floor to the next speaker, Ms. Dorothée Alain-Dupré, head of the Regional Development and Multi-Level Governance Division at the OECD. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Michael, and thank you very much to Florian for your opening remarks and for setting the scene so clearly. Good morning, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here. Thank you all for joining us today. It's a pleasure to see such a strong participation from the 4 regions involved in this project and from many regional and local stakeholders who have contributed to this work, and also from other regions joining us today. This is already the 3rd online event we organize together as part of this project. And each of these moments has allowed us to take stock of the progress. Today, this discussion comes at a pivotal and strategic moment. It is pivotal because across Europe, we are all reflecting on the future of the EU's next multi-annual financial framework and what it means for regions, as Florian mentioned. But it is also strategic because this project has allowed the 4 participating regions to take a step back, assess their current governance system for EU funds, and identify with the OECD what adjustment could strengthen them ahead for the next EU funding cycle. Over the past 6 months, we at the OECD have worked very closely with the 4 regions and their local stakeholders through a series of missions, workshops, analytical work, and many discussions. This has led to the deliverables that will be presented today: a recommendations report, a strategic action plan, and an implementation roadmap for each region. You will hear much more about this shortly from the OECD team, so I just would like to briefly highlight 3 points. First, this is a deeply place-based project. Yes, many challenges around EU funds are shared across regions, but the solutions can rarely be one size fits all. That is why we have worked closely with each region to design tailored recommendations and action plans that really reflect their institutional context, priorities, and funding ecosystems. Importantly, we did not look at one, but also at who should do it, how it could be implemented, and when it should happen. We therefore identified responsible actors, key preconditions for implementation, and a sequencing of actions across the short, medium, and longer term. Second, this work strikes a careful balance between realism and ambition. Many of the proposed actions are practical and achievable with reasonable effort. But at the same time, the project encourages regions to think more ambitiously about the future of their governance system. Why? In an increasingly uncertain and competitive environment that Florian recalled, improving gradually is not always enough. If and when existing structures are not delivering their full potential, it is important to ask fundamental questions and consider reforms that can make them work better. But this is something the regions know and embrace. Throughout this project, we have been really impressed by the willingness of the participating regions to engage in exactly this kind of solution, strategic and forward-looking reflection. And third, the lessons from this project go well beyond the 4 participating regions. The insights emerging from Brussels capital regions, Silesia, Thuringia, and Wallonia can provide inspiration for many other regions across Europe preparing for the next phase of EU funding. But beyond the recommendations themselves, the project has also produced tools that can help regions, any regions, guide reform and track progress in implementation. These lessons are already reaching beyond the 4 participating regions. And in this respect, I would like to thank the Spanish regions of Catalonia and the Basque Country, which hosted a study visit earlier this year and shared their experience. And I would like also to acknowledge the 3 observer countries participating in this project, whose engagement has enriched the exchanges throughout the project. So Bosnia-Herzegovina, Kosovo, and Moldova. And finally, and very importantly, I would like to thank the 4 regions involved in this project for their commitment, engagement, and hard work throughout the different phases of the project. And of course, I would like to thank SG Reform for their support and their excellent cooperation since the first phase of the project. From organizing missions and workshops to contributing ideas for the action plans and roadmaps, this has been truly a collective effort. So I hope that today's event will not only allow us to present the results of this work, but also to continue the dialogue on how regions can strengthen their governance systems and make the most of the opportunity that EU funding offers for regional development. Thank you again for all of you. I look forward to the discussion and to hearing your insights.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Dorota, for your opening remarks. Indeed, we've been constantly impressed by the willingness to find ways to improve the scene at the regional level. So yes, indeed, I agree with what you mentioned. But let's move now to the presentations and to start presenting what these last 6 months have been all about. We will start with the region of Brussels, and I have the pleasure to present myself the recommendations report, the strategic action plan, and the implementation roadmap for this region. Of course, we will discuss the challenges, but the focus of today is about the recommendations, the action plans, how they are prioritized, and how are they to be implemented. Of course, we won't be able to delve into every specific action. Of course, there are many more. So we will refer you to the actual outputs if you want to have more details. But in general, we'll give you an overview of what the documents contain. Of course, many of you know that the Brussels capital region is, of course, the capital of Belgium, but it's also one of Europe's most significant institutional and economic hubs. Needless to say, it's a highly competitive and productive metropolitan economy. It represents about 18% of the national GDP. It has a high population density, and it really performs strongly in terms of international attractiveness, which of course creates major opportunities. But at the same time, we realized with the region that the region really operates within a multi-layered federal system that sometimes it's hard to navigate, and this can create coordination challenges, particularly when engaging with EU funding programs. We identified five main challenges in the first phase of this project. Those were, just for a quick reminder, those were the uneven internal capacities and human resource gaps that we can find across administrations. Sometimes we also see fragmented coordination, something that Mr. Hauser was already alluding to in his opening remarks. We also felt there was a fragmented monitoring, and it was difficult sometimes to evaluate how the region was doing, not least because of the so-called headquarters effect. We also found that its strategic proximity and institutional access to the EU was perhaps a bit underused. And finally, we saw that there were some financial and budgetary constraints that really hindered the region's ability to co-finance EU projects. So once we analyzed this, what are the key recommendations and selected actions that we've proposed? As I said, we can't cover everything in detail, but we have selected the most representative examples. Our first recommendation was about strategic leadership, because participation in EU programs should be guided by clear priorities across the administration. And so to achieve this, internal coordination should be reinforced in the Brussels capital region. Concretely, for example, we propose including a standing EU projects item on the agendas of management committees. And of course, we also encourage that the region makes EU funding a priority. And this should be expressed perhaps in a government declaration or in a similar document that allows seeing EU engagement as a collective responsibility more than just an isolated task that is something that we found on the ground sometimes. Also, coordination with municipalities could be improved, for example, by creating or maintaining a regular calendar of EU-related networking events, which are super important to get funding. This could be coordinated by Brussels International, and this would allow that administrations and partners can identify synergies and build consortia more easily. And finally, it is also important to plan EU engagement. It shouldn't be an ad hoc exercise. And this perhaps should be made possible by supporting senior officials as well through leadership training focused on EU programs and strategic positioning. The second recommendation addresses something that we hear very often, and it's the issue on capacity. We know, and we have heard many times, that accessing EU funds is quite complex, and it can be also very competitive. So EU focal points that already are in place should be strengthened. Among other things, we recommend defining formal roles and clear job descriptions for EU funding officers across administrations, so that we avoid having people that do EU fund mobilization on top of their responsibilities. We also recommend promoting peer learning, encouraging that there are structured and practical exchanges, really practical, hands-on, to spread knowledge across the administrations. And this could be part of a structured upskilling strategy that encourages participation in EU training and networking opportunities. The third recommendation concerns also something that we hear often. It's the financial barriers. We know that EU funding requires co-financing, and budget rigidity can also limit the participation. So the region should try to introduce more multi-annual budget flexibility to ease participation in EU projects. Now, this may not be a short-term goal, but it is indeed quite important. In that sense, pilot tools for pre-financing and co-financing could be tested. For example, we propose creating a dedicated budget line to support consultancy costs for those projects that are deemed strategic for the region and are fundable or potentially fundable with EU funds. And finally, we also propose that there's a bit more training, or more at least specialized on EU financial management, complemented with practical tools like annotated budget templates, eligibility checklists, etc., which are deemed quite useful by people, by potential beneficiaries. Then we also provide a recommendation on monitoring and learning. We propose, among other things, to develop a database of EU projects that is internal to the region and that becomes a shared knowledge hub. This could serve as a tracking tool of what's going on in the region, and also to ensure that there is institutional memory of the projects that you do get, and you can learn from those. This database could also help track applications that are not successful and learn from why they weren't. In this regard, we also recommend that that the region puts in place a system of structured reviews of proposals that haven't been successful. And we explain also in the action plan how this could be done. And finally, we know that Brussels suffers from what I mentioned before, the headquarters effect, which makes it difficult to know what projects go really to the region. One way to try and resolve this issue is to require administrations to briefly justify in the database that we propose creating how each project directly benefits or is expected to directly benefit the region. And finally, our fifth recommendation is about making better use of the unique strategic position that Brussels is in within the EU ecosystem. First, we have recommended to map priority EU networks that exist and that are priority for the region, and organize biannual coordination meetings among departments to discuss about the main priorities and to see how they can engage as one, not just as separate administrations, but more collectively. We have also proposed to develop a simple reporting template for those instances where someone in the region would participate in EU networks, and so that can be circulated to other EU fund managers in the region. And finally, partnerships need to be strengthened and showing that Brussels' international profile as an asset. So informal contacts, local events can really be instrumental and should be a priority for administrations, so that that can lead to building consortia. Of course, we can't do everything at the same time, huh? And we are fully aware that the region's context is fiscally tight and challenging, and that the measures that we presented here are not all easy to implement. So some are more realistic in the short term, so some are more let's say more implementable in the longer term. This is why we have also prioritized these actions. For the short term, for example, we regroup actions that are considered achievable within the 2026-2027 period. For instance, within this within the objective of to strengthen political ownership, this is where we include, or we suggest including, an EU projects item in the senior management meeting, so that they start talking about these issues in this at the higher level of the region. The medium term represents actions that are more demanding and generally require additional resources. This includes, for example, improvements that may be a bit more innovative than usual, which is, for example, the integration of an AI-powered tool to find relevant EU funding opportunities. Why not use AI to at least make more sense about what's out there? And finally, in the long term, we include also actions involving structural reforms that may require modifying regional regulations or framework. And an example of this is the development of a more flexible and multi-annual financial framework, or the development of specialized training modules on EU financial rules. This has been also translated into an implementation roadmap. In the action plan, you will find all the proposed actions clearly sequenced, with the responsible actors identified, with implementation timelines and any preconditions required for implementation. You can see an example on the left. But as I said, we have created this implementation roadmap, which includes monitoring indicators and fields to assess the impact and the level of effort that is required for each action. So the local team will be able to track the progress of each and every one of these measures. Ultimately, of course, the implementation of these actions will depend on sustained political commitment and on administrative follow-through. The potential results, if these reforms are implemented, are notorious. The benefits would be really a more strategic use of resources, a better success rate, and also fewer structural, financial, and organizational barriers to participation. So this is a bit of, in a nutshell, what we've done for Brussels. But I think now we can hear from the region, who's been extremely involved in this process. And I'm pleased to give the floor to Dr. Gert van den Ede, Deputy Secretary General and Acting Director General of Brussels International. The floor is yours whenever you want, Gert.
Okay, thank you, Miguel, for your very fine presentation. Dear colleagues, allow me to begin by warmly thanking the OECD for the clarity of its presentation and the quality of its work, and also the European Commission, especially the SG reform and the TX team, for their continued support and excellent collaboration. This project is a powerful demonstration of the added value of the technical support instrument when it brings regions together around shared challenges and ambitions. The recommendations and actions you have presented today address very real obstacles faced by Brussels actors in accessing EU funding, and they build on assets that already exist within our administration. They also come at a pivotal moment. A new government has taken office with the ambition of restoring the region's financial balance, while negotiations for the next multi-annual financial framework may profoundly reshape the architecture of EU funds. In this context, your recommendations are more than responses to bottlenecks. They offer tools to prepare Brussels for the next programming period and to position ourselves strategically in an evolving and increasingly competitive European funding landscape. Your first recommendation Strengthening strategic leadership and coordination fully echoes our own reflections. Brussels has many strengths: committed EU focal points, motivated teams, and well-established cooperation channels. What we lack, however, is the political anchoring and coherence needed to transform these strengths into a true strategic positioning. Embedding EU engagement into our major regional strategies and investment plans is therefore indispensable. We are already moving in that direction. The new Productive Brussels Task Force, for instance, aligns our industrial and competitiveness policies with EU priorities, exactly the type of strategic alignment you advocate, and a vision we fully share. Your second recommendation addresses one of our most persistent challenges: uneven EU expertise across our administration. And some entities are active and experienced, and others face constraints of time, resources, or confidence. Strengthening capacities, retaining expertise, and fostering peer learning will be essential in the years ahead. At Brussels International, we have already developed tools and guidance that deliver concrete results, but we now need to scale up. With tighter budgets on the horizon, we will need to be more creative and efficient in how we deploy our resources. A structured, needs-based training pathway and stronger mentoring mechanisms are concrete steps we intend to take. Your third recommendation, enhancing budgetary and financial flexibility, also resonates strongly with our reality. Budget discipline and strict procedures are essential as we rationalize our finances, but they can limit our ability to engage in EU projects. The action plan has already triggered important discussions on pre-financing, on multi-annual budgeting for EU income, on improving HR flexibility, and on using external expertise more strategically. Your fourth recommendation highlights a long-standing challenge: institutional learning. Too much expertise is lost when staff move on, and too many lessons remain isolated. A shared knowledge management hub, centralizing project data, templates, lessons learned, and monitoring tools would be transformative. Finally, you call on us to better leverage one of our greatest assets, our unique position in the heart of Europe. We fully agree. Brussels often underuses its proximity to EU institutions, networks, and representations. Better coordination, systematic follow-up, and shared intelligence would allow us not only to participate more effectively in EU initiatives, but also to influence them. In the coming months, Brussels International, working closely with public administrations and municipalities, will use this action plan to shape a regional EU funding strategy and to systematically monitor progress in its implementation. And these steps will help the Brussels capital region prepare rather than simply react as the new EU funding system takes shape. The next 3 years, which also coincide with the upcoming regional elections, offer a crucial window to put these actions in place and ensure our actors are fully ready when the first calls of the next programming period open. To conclude, I want to underline how valuable this process has been. The recommendations provide direction. The action plan offers concrete solutions, and the collaboration between Brussels, the OECD, the Commission, and our partner regions has been exemplary. At my level, I'm fully committed to ensuring that the Brussels capital region strengthens its capacities, its coordination, and its strategic engagement with EU funds, so that we may fully unlock the potential of European opportunities for our region and its citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. van den Ede, for very clear remarks. We will follow closely the developments on the next EU funding strategy of the region. Thanks very much, and we're really happy to have been able to support you so far. Now we're moving away from Belgium for a while, and we're going now to Poland. We're going to start the presentation for the region of Silesia, and I'm pleased to give the floor to Ms. Ewa Bielogłowska, policy analyst at the Decentralization, Subnational Finance and Infrastructure Unit at the OECD. Ewa, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Michael, and I will now be switching to Polish. Poza regionem stołecznym Brukseli w ramach naszego projektu pracowaliśmy
Ladies and
bardzo
gentlemen,
blisko
outside the
z partnerami
Brussels capital
Urzędu
region, we have worked very closely with partners from the Marshal's Office of the Silesian province. On this basis, we have developed recommendations tailored to the specific characteristics and needs of the region. Can I have the next slide, please?
Next.
And the next one. And yet the next one. Thank you.
Dla tych z Państwa, którzy mogą być mniej zaznajomieni z
For those of you
regionem,
who may be less
województwo
familiar with the
śląskie jest
region,
jednym z
the
takich
Silesian
najbardziej
province
zurbanizowanych
is
i
the
najgęściej
most
zaludnionych regionów
urbanized and
w
densely
Polsce.
populated
Skupia
region in
około
Poland,
11,5%
accounts for
ludności
approximately
kraju i generuje ponad
11.5% of the
12%
country's
krajowego
population and
PKB.
generates over
A co bardzo
12% of the
ważne, w
national
kontekście naszej
GDP.
dzisiejszej
What's more important
dyskusji,
is that,
województwo
especially for the
śląskie jest
context of
także
today's
bardzo ważnym
discussion,
beneficjentem
Silesia is
funduszy
also one of the most
unijnych,
important
w
beneficiaries of EU
szczególności jeśli
funds.
chodzi
In
o
particular,
Fundusz na rzecz Sprawiedliwej
when talking about the
Transformacji,
Just Transition
ponieważ jest to
Fund,
prawie
this is
11% całej
actually as much as
alokacji w skali
11% of the
unijnej
total
w obecnej
EU fund
perspektywie
in the
finansowej.
current financial
To
perspective.
oznacza oczywiście duże
That
doświadczenie w
means
zarządzaniu
extensive
funduszami
experience
unijnymi,
in managing
ale też
European
silną
funds,
ambicję, żeby
but also
wykorzystywać
a
je
very strong
jeszcze
ambition to
bardziej
use them even more
strategicznie i efektywnie,
strategically and effectively,
szczególnie poprzez
in
otwieranie
particular
dostępu
by
do
opening,
funduszy dla
by opening
wnioskodawców,
up
którzy być
access to
może
funds for
dotychczas rzadziej z nich
applicants
korzystali lub
who have so
korzystają
far
z
made
nich po
less
raz
use of
pierwszy.
them.
Next slide, please. Tak jak w przypadku regionu stołecznego Brukseli,
Just like in the case of Brussels, in the first diagnostic phase of the project, we have identified 5 main challenges together with the region. So in the case of Silesia, first of all, it is the fact that many stakeholders in the region are not fully aware of the EU funding opportunities available. Information is often scattered and difficult to find. Another problem is that some organizations do not have sufficient resources or expertise to prepare competitive applications. This is interconnected with the third obstacle, which actually is which is about financial barriers. In many cases, there is a lack of funds for pre-financing or own contributions, and organizations are reluctant to invest in uncertain applications. Fourthly, opportunities for networking and exchange of experiences between stakeholders are limited. This is especially the case for smaller organizations or startups who are not aware of the possibilities. And finally, access to EU funds in the region is simply uneven. Organizations outside major centers, especially in rural areas, face additional barriers such as limited access to information and support. In response to these challenges, and based on the conclusions of the workshops held in Katowice at the end of last year to test various courses of action, we have developed 5 main recommendations. These comprise as many as 75 specific measures. We do not have enough time to discuss all of them. However, we're just going to go through the main ones. So first of all, the first set of recommendations concerns increasing the visibility and accessibility of information on EU funds. So more targeted, more data-driven information activities are key. Conducting regular analyses of the use of individual programs. In practice, this means above all strengthening the visibility of available funding opportunities. Let me give you an example. The use of the European Funds for Silesia website as a central source for information and expanding it with new features, such as the availability of search for potential partners or filter information by type of entity. The second recommendation focuses on strengthening the competencies of stakeholders in terms of participation in EU programs. In this recommendation, first of all, we propose systemic mapping of training needs in order to better match the support offered to the actual needs of beneficiaries. Moreover, it is worth testing new formats as part of the regional training offer on project preparation and applying for funds. For example, in regions of France, there are the so-called drop-in clinics where participants can come for a short consultation with an expert on a specific issue, such as, for example, eligibility rules. The third recommendation is about the development of working and of networking and learning between stakeholders, so that organizations can benefit from the experience of those entities that are already successfully obtaining EU funding. Here we're talking about micro grants, for example, less complicated support at the very beginning. Organizations in Katowice, which combine brief information about funds with time for informal conversations and exchange of experience. And the third recommendation concerns reducing financial barriers that hinder participation in EU programs. The fourth recommendation concerns improving coordination in the regional support ecosystem for EU funds. As a first step, it is worth mapping existing support structures, such as local action groups, associations, umbrella organizations, etc. The next step would be to organize regular meetings of key regional organizations, which could bring together active entities in a kind of community of practice, so to say. Workshops, campaigns, etc., etc. This would allow for better coordination and information and outreach activities between institutions. Finally, we recommend strengthening cooperation with other regions in Poland, national contact points, and the central level. In practice, it would mean, for example, organizing joint workshops with representatives of other regions to exchange experiences, as well as closer cooperation with national contact points, etc. The final recommendation concerns strengthening the strategic and political commitment of the region to the use of EU programs. We have translated these recommendations into specific actions. The impact assessment concerns the extent to which a given action can improve access to EU funds and the effectiveness of their use in the long run, in the long term, excuse me. The feasibility rating refers to how complex the implementation of a given action would be, taking into account political, legislative, etc., and other factors. This means it would be easier for the region to identify actions with the greatest potential impact, but also those that are realistic to implement in the short and medium term. The first example is an action with lower impact potential, which is also the first important step in preparing the grant for other action. It involves reviewing how information on EU funding opportunities is currently presented on the EU fund, and obviously there are medium impact potential and highest impact potential too. In addition to the potential impact, we have also assessed the feasibility of individual actions to better understand which ones can be implemented relatively quickly and which ones, although very ambitious, may require more time. The first example is an action that is relatively easy to implement. The idea is that the meeting of the community of practice mentioned earlier should be organized around specific topics, such as support for SMEs, etc., etc. The second example is an action that requires moderate organizational effort, involves better linking regional strategies with funding opportunities from EU programs, and the last example is the measure that is more demanding. To help the Silesian province translate its action plan into concrete steps, we have also developed an implementation roadmap, very similar to Brussels and to other regions. But let me just mention that this is a practical tool that supports planning, prioritization, and and monitoring of the implementation of action. So, for example, the tool includes the previously described assessed of the potential impact and feasibility of each action, and then there are different other steps. So what are the expected outcomes? Looking ahead, we hope that the recommendations and action plan presented here will point to various potential directions for the region. It's about increasing the visibility, consistency, and about reducing barrier. I would like to give the floor to my colleague, Deputy Ms. Stefania Kotar-Sikora, Deputy Director, Department of Regional Development and Transformation. Thank you for giving the floor. I would like to, first of all, thank OECD and the European Commission for the project, which is very important, very valuable to us, because we are the region that changes its category in the cohesion policy. So we're becoming the intermediary region. We have new challenges ahead of us as such, and as such, this project is particularly important to us. So thank you that we have access to this advice that you give us. Second of all, I'd like to mention the challenge that has also been mentioned already, the twin transition. So the double transition, so-called, the digital and energy transition. We still have mines active in the region. Our country is still, sadly, very dependent on those. And so this is still an important challenge to us as a region. So this project is helping us gain more access to EU funds in this aspect. So this project is of utmost importance to us again. Let me emphasize that. So I'm happy that we can be one of the main regions participating in the project. But let me move on, because I know that we're time pressed. When it comes to the recommendations and the action plan that we have been presented and the roadmap as well, thank you for those very important recommendations. Perhaps when you're inside the process, some of the things escape you and they're not as easily visible. We are a region that's in a lot of respect asymmetrical when it comes to applying for the cohesion policy funds. Very often these were funds, these were funds that we had access to, but some limited access. We have learned how to gain access to some of those funds, but not all of them. Eva has mentioned we want to be more ambitious, and we want to turn our ambitions into more specific and more comprehensive actions. And in this, from this point of view, thank you for showing us what our potential challenges might be with regard to those 5 goals. Just again, very briefly, in a nutshell, we are absolutely aware that the visibility of funds and the expertise that we have access to is the first field that we need to focus on. This is definitely a challenge for us. But also, just as Eva has mentioned, we are limited, formally limited, how to set up an effective portal for beneficiaries, for interested parties. But we will focus on that in the first place. When it comes to the second goal, thank you for the recommendations. Thank you for the second recommendation. We know that we have strong beneficiaries which apply absolutely successfully for the European funds. However, we also have a significant level of divergence of partners who are also less capable of applying successfully. This is linked to another recommendation of yours, which is about the critical importance of access in the early, critical importance of the early stages of applying. I know that our regional structure of support is still fairly limited. We need to reshape the architecture of the system, but we know that we have potential to do that, and we know that we can develop our strengths, even though it is definitely difficult still. And then obviously the question of our strategic involvement in the future, in future in general, we know that our role is important. We know that future is uncertain, that we need to build resilience, and I think this is key for all of the regions present here. And so obviously this is an important area for us. Thank you so much again for your cooperation, for your support.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kojara Shikora, for your remarks. I mean, it's great to hear from your department this wish to go further and to really be more ambitious, particularly at a time where everything seems more uncertain than it was before, and that you also will use these deliverables that we've produced to guide you along the way. So thank you very much to you and Eva. Now we are moving to the third region, which is in Germany. We're moving to Thuringia, and I would like to give the floor to Sandra Jog. This is a policy analyst at the Decentralization, Subnational Finance and Infrastructure Unit, also at the OECD. The floor is yours, Sandra.
Thank you, Mikel. I'm going to switch to German. Guten Morgen zusammen. Ich freue mich sehr.
Good morning, everybody. I'm really happy to be able to present the results of Thuringia to you. They are really the result of a joint effort and of a lot of cooperation and workshops in Thuringia in order to be able to work out those results. So my presentation is will have 6 parts. I will provide you with a short introduction of Thuringia, then I will present the key findings from the SWOT analysis, then I will talk about the key recommendations and actions from our workshops, the actions timeline for the measures and the roadmap for implementation, and then I will talk finally about our expected results. Maybe first of all, something about Thuringia had the population of around about 2.1 million in 2023, accounting for around 2.5% of the national population in Germany. It's a rural region where, despite being one of the smallest regions in both area and population, it plays an important role in Germany's industrial and scientific landscape, but it is experiencing a pronounced demographic change with 2% of the population decline in between 2013 and 2023 compared to a 4.8 increase nationwide. And that is Thuringia is underrepresented in EU programs, receiving only 1.3% of Horizon Europe and 0.28% of LIFE funding allocated within Germany. This represents the lowest regional uptake for LIFE and Horizon Europe. I would like to provide you with the key findings from the SWOT analysis for Thuringia. I will try to keep it short. Do not want to go into detail, just to give you an idea that Thuringia starts from a good foundation with strong political support and committed players. We have really committed players in the region, but at the the same time, participation is hindered by a fragmented support structure and limited capacity. We very often have informational support structures, but the individual players do not know what they individually need in order to have access. And capacities are limited, particularly among less experienced players. So the question is now how to mobilize them in Thuringia. At the same time, we have complex administrative procedures and high co-financing requirements. But we also see potential future opportunities in order to make participation better in Thuringia. Considering these insights from this analysis, we developed 5 recommendations. The first is strengthen strategic capacity and advisory support for strategically relevant and less experienced stakeholders, which means that we only want to include strategically important players that are not able to do it themselves. We also want to, as a second point, expand EU and interregional networks and make Thuringia more present on a European level, and to better integrate EU programs into regional and municipal plans. And we want to enhance the financial capacity of eligible beneficiaries of EU funding and strengthen strategic stakeholder engagement and monitoring. We held an interim workshop in Thuringia to talk directly with local stakeholders and gather practical insights on the recommendations suggested. There was a high level of alignment across all discussions with the proposed recommendations, and the most important added value was to help to make actions more concrete with a strong focus on practical implementation. And I would like to present some of the measures to you. I will not be able to present all of the measures that were included into the action plans, just give you some examples. So first recommendation is about strengthening capacity and advisory support, particularly for those less experienced but relevant stakeholders. They need better and more targeted support, better coordination of existing advisory offers. We need to define target groups to say, who do we want to reach? And we need to have a better coordination and networking between the different stakeholders. And the idea was to establish a network of EU offices across the different ministries responsibly for centrally managing EU programs. It is also important to provide networks in order to make it possible for players to have access to EU programs. It is not always about building up networks from scratch, but to use existing networks in a more strategic and coordinated way in order to facilitate access to EU funding programs, and maybe also to use existing programs in order to have regional players integrate into those networks. Our third recommendation is to better integrate EU programs into regional and local planning, which means that we'll somehow integrate them better into regional plans to create incentives in order to have regional players become part of those programs. The fourth recommendation concerns financial barriers. Financing requirements may limit participation. There's a lot that can be done. First of all, it is to have information offers, to have better coordination, or to provide targeted advice on how people can apply. What we saw in the region, that we have some experienced players, but we have some players who do not know anything about access to EU programs, who do not know where to start, how to get started. And we could also look at how to align local programs better to, well, EU programs. And it would make sense to see what are the financial barriers for the individual groups and how can we adapt those programs. And the fifth recommendation is about strengthening strategic stakeholder engagement and institutional processes for accessing centrally managed EU funds. We have a coordination role, of course. We could, for example, have EU fitness checks being introduced in order to link regional programs better to EU programs, or we could also do a small type of monitoring in order to understand who is responsible for what. Sometimes we have a minister or people working in a ministry who know what they do, but who do not know that, for example, local players also are active in the same EU program, for example, to get a type of map who does what on a regional level. Now, looking at the timeline, we are aware that some of the proposed actions may be more difficult to implement during the current EU funding period, particularly given the existing budgetary constraints. Some actions are more realistic in the short time, others are more feasible in the longer term. That is why we did some sub-prioritization. We defined short and medium-term measures and medium to long-term measures. Some of those measures are complex, but the short and medium-term ones are considered to be more realistic in order to strengthen capacities that are already existing in the region. For example, online information events or peer exchange sessions, which means to, well, just try to use what is already there. The medium and long-term measures are more ambitious, need stronger coordination, for example, to link regional strategies better to EU strategies. One example would be the European policy strategy of the region for the next term. Of course, we also worked out an implementation roadmap to move from prioritization to implementation. It proposes monitoring indicators for each action, allows progress to be tracked over time. But successful implementation is not only dependent on indicators and actions, but also on political commitment in the region. Well, and what we hope for is that if the suggested actions are implemented, the positive impact on Thuringia will be good in order to benefit from funds after 2025, that we will reduce the barriers to participation in EU-funded projects, and that we will have a better link of strategic priorities of our region to regional development objectives and increased participation of Thuringian stakeholders. That was all from my part. Thank you for your attention. And I would like to hand over to Ms. Janssen from the State Chancellery.
Dear colleagues, these projects do have a contribution to get more visible. It's not only about funds and money, and it has been said in the opening statement, but it's also about the money, but not only. Thank you very much to the European Commission and the colleagues of SD Reform, and of course, the colleagues of OECD for this intense and very constructive cooperation within the project. Ms. York, Mr. Casado, you've visited us twice in Erfurt. Also, Ms. Kasonka was there. You took a lot of time for the conversation with us, for the colleagues on site. This was paramount for us in order to transport also the importance of this project. We really do appreciate this. And with this presentation, this important analysis phase is coming to an end. Now we are coming to the implementation works. It's up to us to withdraw the right lectures, and it has been said the starting point in Thuringia, due to the double budget we have for 26-27, is not an easy one. Till 28, we only have limited additional financial wriggle room in order to implement very cost-intensive actions. But in your presentation, it came out clearly, there's a lot we can already do and have to do, independent of the question of the funding and the resources. So focus will be on coordination, on structural further development and information sharing with our local partners. And the state chancellery has a pivotal role to coordinate all resources, and we will try really to set the right priorities. On the other hand, it has been said often, now is a good strategic moment, since we are preparing ourselves for the next funding period in the EU. We are all affected by it in the same extent. So for us, it's essential to strategically position ourselves on time. We have to mobilize all relevant actors in Thuringia, and as you've said, the central EU programs have to be linked to other funds, and the whole project and the action plan, this comes at the right moment for us. So now we have to really prepare ourselves with the right pathways. And you've said this as well. We do know the implementation of the advice needs some political decision. For now, it was more on a technical level, but the further development of structures and a framework condition need political decisions. In the last OECD visit, we had this exchange on a political level with the secretaries of states of the ministries. And then we spoke about the recommendations. The next step for us is the implementation, and this has to be enshrined on a political level before the summer break. We have to determine which actions get which priority and will be implemented in which format. And all political decision makers have to be on board. And the outcomes of the project will be embedded in our new political strategy. This is elaborated in the State's Chancellery in order to guarantee that they are not fragmented or isolated, but will be really embedded. For us, it's always nice to see that the project already has had its effects. So the awareness about central EU programs, and thanks to the workshops you did in Thuringia, in the local government, has risen a lot, this awareness. And some MEPs, we had them early on board, and in the regional parliament, they're very interested, and we have their backing. And that's important for us. So the OECD visits, the workshops, and also your personal capacity to convince us and your expertise really reached us. So this now is the basis for our further work on regional level. Some actions have been initiated, especially in terms of information and communication. We need a targeted exchange. We have to elaborate information formats. In October last year, we had a special day, and we were surprised how much this uptake, how big the uptake was, how it was well embraced, this special day, with a high participation. So this shows us we're on the good way. I think the message reached us. this is not a final document, it's just a program to work on. We will do the best out of it, I can promise. And we have to link ourselves more with Europe so that the citizens see that Europe does something good. And this is not a bloodless event, but this can really be filled with life. Thank you very much. Personally, I would like to thank this very valuable preparation work. Thanks ever so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Janssen, for your remarks. Indeed, I think Thuringia is a region where we feel also that where we really feel that the political level has been extremely involved already, and so we're really happy to hear that we are already feeling these effects of the project, right? Like this raising awareness of the EU funds. So really happy to hear all that. I think that the issue of political will comes up in all core regions. It's important, but I think the key message is that we are prepared, that now with these documents you have different actions laid out that you can pursue when you secure this political leadership. So thank you very much, Dr. Janssen, again for your remarks. And last but certainly not least, I would like to turn to the fourth region in this project, that is Wallonia, back to Belgium. And I would like to give the floor to Ms. Margot Vincent, a policy analyst as well in the Decentralization and National Finance and Infrastructure Unit at the OECD. The floor is yours, Margot.
Thank you very much, Michael. Bonjour à toutes, bonjour à tous. I will speak in French for the presentation.
All right, I will speak in French for my presentation. It's a pleasure for me just to present the main recommendations and the proposed actions of Wallonia. This is a collective work. Just like the other regions, we went there and to Namur to have practical workshops in November. And the idea was, in fact, to refine the initial draft deliverables. Then we shared them with WalMeet EU, which distributed them to various stakeholders in the region. And in fact, we'd like to extend our sincere thanks to WalMeet and all the participants and stakeholders who provided some feedback on these documents. Now, these comments have been incorporated into the final versions of the deliverables that have been shared with you by WalMeet. Next slide, please.
Next slide. Thank you. Donc, quelques chiffres clés pour commencer.
Let's have a look now at some key figures. Wallonia represents more than half of the Belgium's territory, but only a third of its population and about a quarter of the national GDP. A region with many strengths, a well-established industrial base, research institutions and clusters, and dynamic innovation ecosystems. But it's also a region that shows some lower socioeconomic indicators when compared to the national average, like a lower GDP growth and a higher unemployment rate. Now, in this context, it is therefore essential to mobilize the European funds more effectively to strengthen the region's competitiveness. So during the project's analytical phase, 5 main challenges limiting the participation of Walloon stakeholders in European programs. I'd like to briefly summarize them. So the first one, challenges in terms of information and communication, limited administrative capacity in relation to European procedures perceived as complex, financial constraints, in particular the need for co-financing, fragmentation of regional coordination regarding European funds, and finally the lack of systematic long-term strategic planning for European funds. Now, to address these challenges, we've developed recommendations around 5 main themes, which follow the structure of these challenges and with concrete actions. We're not going to get into details about these, but we had recommendations and actions. You can always have a look at our reports and the action plan, which also have some detailed information about these and also the comments that we received. So the first one is, in fact, to strengthen information and communication channels in Wallonia. So that includes clarifying the roles of the main institutional actors, especially WalMeet EU, as an entry point for new project promoters, that is for general information on European funding opportunities, but also as a platform for Walloon stakeholders to connect. And of course, the SPW, the Walloon Public Services, as a point of reference for more experienced stakeholders regarding European programs in their respective fields. Then we wanted to map all support structures linked to European funds and to communicate clearly about them. And finally, we want to streamline communication channels to communicate thematically and in a targeted manner to local stakeholders. The second focus is about strengthening administrative capacities. Now, the aim is to ensure support for both less experienced stakeholders by reducing barriers to entry and more experienced stakeholders who bear all these coordination costs. So reducing participation gaps must, of course, not be at the expense of the most advanced stakeholders. The actions include mapping the skills and needs of the various stakeholders, developing a training roadmap to address these different needs, and the organization of practical workshops covering the entire cycle of a European project, which might include also a peer-to-peer exchange events and networking events, etc. But also, and in particular, I'd like to emphasize this point, to ensure access to European networks events. This is key, notably through financial supports, in order to maintain the visibility of Walloon stakeholders and support partnerships at the European level. And finally, facilitating approaches such as mentoring or the use of specialized consulting firms. Now, about the financial capacities, we want, in fact, to have these a more predictable co-financing support for selected projects, specifically those that are directly aligned with regional strategic priorities. We want, as much as possible, to have a pluriannual envelope for these, and we want to also have the different financial help. We want to encourage the local stakeholders to use European programs rather than regional funding, which is perceived as more accessible. Promoting cascade funding mechanisms for SMEs to reduce administrative burdens. And this means supporting larger organizations which play a coordinating role by providing them with targeted support for the organization and management of consortia. Promoting instruments and labels such as the Seal of Excellence to support high-quality projects that could not be funded at the European level, and finally promoting synergies between European programs. Now, the fourth area, to strengthen coordination and governance, to better structure the representation and advocacy of regional and national priorities upstream the European processes. This implies consolidating existing coordination structures, rather than just making new ones or creating new instances and bodies when lots of them already exist. And namely with the steering committee by expanding its membership and strengthening its link with the SPW strategic committee, the so-called COSTRA, and also to promote more frequent meetings with the cross-cutting approach to European funds, for example, through the network of SPW European correspondents. And finally, strengthening cooperation with the federal level, as well as other Belgian regions, so that to consolidate a common vision on European funds. Finally, the fifth one, this is a long-term strategic planning, and here we recommend to better align regional strategies with the European funding opportunities. Now, this already exists for some documents, such as the Smart Specialization Strategy, and this could be replicated for other strategical documents by developing roadmaps that link strategic priorities to European programs in a more systematic way. We want to prioritize the most relevant European programs for the region and promote programs that foster international cooperation in order to strengthen the international standing of Walloon's stakeholders, strengthen Wallonia's strategic representation and advocacy at the national and European levels, particularly through a coordinated regional position, and finally strengthen political commitment to promoting and using European programs in Wallonia. And we heard that previously in other presentations. Now, just like the other regions, a detailed action plan and a roadmap have been also developed for Wallonia to make these recommendations and to support their implementation. And the action plan includes for each action operational sub-actions, which we encourage you to consult for all the details. And the stakeholders can be responsible for their implementation, as well as the expected impact. Now, the roadmap allows to progress to be tracked by classifying actions according to their impact or implementation effort or stakeholders, while also proposing concrete monitoring indicators for each action. Finally, and I will conclude on this point, implementing these recommendations would increase the participation of Walloon stakeholders in European programs to improve the quality and success rate of applications, reduce financial and administrative obstacles, and finally to enable a more strategic use of European funds and a better position Wallonia for the next multi-annual financial framework, the MFF. So thank you for your attention, and I'll pass the floor now to Luc back from the EU part, from the French-speaking parts. Thank you very much, Margot. Allow me just to carry on in French, just to show you some of our work that has also been developed. I'd like to start by thanking the entire team, not only for their work, but also for the quality. And this has been going on for many months now. And also always this concern to understand what's going on the field. I'd like to thank DG Reform and all the other services. Thank you for these exchanges with the Catalonia and also the region, the Spanish region. It's true that we've got very similar points with Wallonia, and despite all these common points, we still see that this is the access to funding is not exactly the same when compared to Bilbao, because in fact this is a very complex part, and this is what we see also in the Basque Country and when compared to Wallonia. Of course, the results in the report are very important, very interesting, and I think this is also for the other regions. But let me just comment on some of them. So these are some suggestions I'd like to share with you without actually getting too many details, but other colleagues will be able also to complete my thoughts during the Q&A. Regarding training and communication, we already started this work. This was the first phase, the analysis phase. Things have improved in the meantime. Now, we might say that communication is not necessarily there, or if so, this is always for the same stakeholders. The number of associations, public structures, very small ones, are normally left behind, and therefore the communication is not there. Coordination, effective coordination among the different active structures in terms of communication about these European initiatives are still a major obstacle. So Wallonia is not aiming to be the coordinator, but I've suggested in my report, I think we can play the role of an entry point, specifically for the starting structures and those that are still in the administrative aspects, be them Wallonia or European ones. Now, once you understand the administrative parts and how to implement these European projects, this is a major challenge, no doubt. And it's not just about the accountability of those that are part of these projects, but also from the European Commission. Now, today we want to streamline everything, and sometimes we got the feeling that when we want to implement these kind of projects, that's exactly the opposite that happens. So we need, of course, good management, we need transparency, but the rules need to be very fair for everybody at the European level. Now, the authors of these reports are suggesting that we need training, be them for public administration, but also for the beneficiaries. That's per se, this is an excellent idea, and this implies that we need to mobilize experts, and specifically for those from Wallonia. And as you know, this implies some costs, and we need to be aware of that. Now, about the financial support. This is in fact a major obstacle. The Wallonian government is fully aware of that. They are now trying to adjust some of these points, namely in terms R&D. This is one of the aspects that also was mentioned at the beginning of this webinar. Coordination, intra-regional coordination is indeed a major challenge. This has been stressed by many speakers. And of course, we cannot just add obstacles just one after the other. Again, it means coordination, collaboration that we need to have in mind. This good willingness by itself is not enough, and we need to be able to have effective collaboration at all levels and among all stakeholders. It is indeed one of the objectives from the Wallonian government in the political note that we saw. So just to conclude, I fully believe that the work that is now being developed is going to be very useful for the 4 different regions, and this has been also highlighted by the next pluriannual financial framework for the next MFF, and I think it can be a source of inspiration for other regions as well. So I'd like to thank you for your attention, and of course I wish you, and I wish us as well, good results. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Pack. Thank you very much. Indeed, the goodwill is not enough. We also need to move past that, and we need to have actions that are effectively implemented, and we need to have this spirit of collaboration implemented in the region so that we can work as one and speak of one voice. So thank you very much for your remarks. And now we've heard from the 4 regions, and we've heard that there are similar challenges in general, but also that we have taken a we have not taken a one-size-fits-all approach. So we have different solutions sometimes for each of the challenges. I would like to share my screen just to share. Someone is helping. Thanks very much. Maybe we move to the next slide. Perfect. Yes, so as I was saying, we have seen a set of regional presentations at the moment. Some of you may wonder, what are the lessons that we can extract from the 4 regions, from across the 4 regions, but also more generally, what guidance other EU regions can take from this work? And we have several other regions in the call today. We have identified several similar challenges across the 4 regions, despite their institutional contexts, and we have addressed them in a one-to-one tailored way. But we can see that the lessons that we draw are not only relevant for these 4 regions, but for many, many others. And here you can see a list of the main lessons that emerged from our work. They don't necessarily appear in all 4 regions, but they reflect real challenges that at least one of the regions experiences. And from this, we have now distilled 5 broader guidelines that are particularly important for any actors dealing with EU funds, especially knowing, as many of you pointed out, that regions may likely need to adapt their structures in view of the next multi-annual financial framework. The first lesson is that access to EU funding is fundamentally a governance issue rather than a purely technical one. We've seen that many regional strategies already do reference EU priorities, but these ambitions are not always translated into operational funding pathways. And so administrations sometimes react to calls once they are published rather than preparing already strategically in advance. So the first guideline is to treat EU funding as a core strategic function, and we need to embed it into regional planning and linking EU funding opportunities to the regional policy priorities that each region may have. The second lesson is about administrative capacity. We've also talked about this. We've seen that capacity gaps are often structural. They're linked to limited staff, to uneven expertise. Often the turnover of staff and also the lack of knowledge management systems has also led to the loss of valuable experience from previous EU projects. And we know that to improve our access to EU funds, we really need, as I was mentioning before, a clear and politically backed mandate to do so. So we need to institutionalize and professionalize, if we can click on the slide, please. We need to institutionalize and professionalize EU capacity by building stable expertise, strengthening knowledge management, and also ensuring that we secure this political support that in the end is crucial. The third lesson relates to, yes, the issue of money. Uncertainty around pre-financing and co-financing can discourage participation, particularly for smaller or less experienced actors such as municipalities, NGOs, or SMEs. In addition, if there are regional subsidies that are available, we're also seeing that this can reduce the incentives to apply for more demanding EU programs. This may or may not be a good thing, but it leads us to the third guideline, which is that financial bottlenecks need to be addressed proactively, and we have to ensure that there is predictable co-financing and there is an alignment of regional funding with the EU opportunities that appear. The fourth lesson concerns the networks and ecosystems. We know that competitive EU programs increasingly reward actors that are embedded in strong European partnerships, rather than just in isolated efforts or organizations. So not participating in EU networks frequently can really reduce the visibility of regional actors and their chances of joining project consortia early on. So this leads to our fourth guideline, which is that you need to build ecosystems of networked actors. We need to foster partnerships and participation in these European collaboration networks if we want to access EU funds. And finally, the fifth lesson concerns leadership and coordination. We've heard a bit about it as well. Fragmented governance structures really reduce the strategic use of EU funds. So without strong coordination, actors often pursue EU opportunities independently. This is the point that Monsieur Pack was doing. It's this spirit of collaboration that we need. This leads to the fifth and the last guideline, which is that stronger coordination among existing structures should be prioritized over creating new ones. And there should be clear leadership and the mandate to set strategic priorities. So I would say that in this context, this project is proving particularly timely, as Dorothea mentioned in her opening remarks. The action plans and the implementation roadmaps that you've seen and that we've developed with each region are really practical tools. They can help structure reforms, monitor progress, and support the long-term strategic positioning, especially as we prepare for the next MFF. And while this work has been developed with the 4 participating regions, I think that many lessons, many tools or approaches that we've used can also be valuable for other regions. So I'd say that to all listeners that you should keep posted about this project, because in the next and final phase of this project, we will aim to continue engaging not only with the 4 regions here, but also more broadly with the aim of supporting more EU regions in building stronger government systems that allow them to engage strategically with EU funds. That's the end of my presentation at the moment. I hope it was clear and it encompassed all the ideas that we have that we have derived from our missions, from our work together. But indeed, it was mentioned that the 4 regions traveled for a study visit, for a week-long study visit in Spain in January, and we are really happy to have the 2 regions represented here. So we would like to briefly give them the floor to explain a bit what their reactions are to what they now listened today. And so I would like to start with the Basque Country. I would like to give the floor to Ms. Sofia de Orue, Head of Unit of the Finance and Treasury Department at the Provincial Council of Vizcaya. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for inviting us to participate in this event. Okay. we, of course, believe that regional and local authorities are key actors for implementing EU funds because they define and they develop strategic projects according to the needs of their territories. However, we realized that most of them, particularly the smallest ones, need support to participate in EU opportunities because of the complexity, added workload, and the need of extra human resources to dedicate to this task. Therefore, we believe that vigorous administrations should at least accompany them in this process. And how? First of all, it's crucial to know what kind of municipalities we have in our territory, the size, location, if they are inland, coastal, rural, urban, etc. We have also to know their main areas of interest, the topology of their strategic projects, and in short, what kind of support they would need from us. So it's very important to listen to them to help them properly. And as a result of these consultations we have made to municipalities, we have decided to first of all, send them tailored information about call events and platforms. This is essential for avoiding extra work and save time. Secondly, to set up direct channels with them in order to facilitate consultations on this topic. And we try to have a close attitude towards them and answer as soon as possible. Thirdly, to enhance capacities of local authorities by organizing webinars focused on presenting success stories and solving obstacles. And fourthly, to support them financially. For this task, we publish a grant regulation that covers the external costs from hiring an external consultancy to prepare the submission of a local project to a European call. This financial support is crucial because each municipality is free to choose the external consultancy they prefer. And furthermore, they will receive all the support they need. When we created the European Guidance Office for Municipalities, our aim was to support only municipalities, not other groupings or intermediates, for example, like local development agencies. The main goal was to empower municipalities in obtaining EU funds. But now we realize that municipalities work in association with other entities, and we notice that all of them are necessary when participating in EU calls because they gain size, they gain human resources, they gain capacity and experience. So now we support all kinds of local authorities where public entities are represented. And to finalize, I would like to say that political engagement in the local authorities is essential to face the challenge of participating in EU projects. Why? Because to success, they need to spend time and resources, and therefore political will is critical. We are aware that local authorities are used to requesting extra funds at national and regional level to implement their local projects. But now the challenge for us is how to ease the way to take the leap to participate in European projects. That's our contribution. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. De Rue, for your contribution. I noted down the importance of listening, right? So to really know who you're talking to, what their needs are, and sometimes this seems basic, but sometimes it's really hard to reach out to those potential beneficiaries. Like how do you identify them? It's already a big step, and we've seen that in some of the regions in this project. Also, that's been a challenge, and we try to support that. But thank you very much for your contribution. Indeed, I'm sure that they learned a lot in Vizcaya. I'm now pleased to give the floor to the second region that was visited, and this is Catalonia, also in Spain. I'm pleased to give the floor to Ms. Teresa Medina Plans, Deputy Director General for European Funds at the Regional Ministry for Economy and Finance of Catalonia. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor for us not only participate today and also in the study and also to host this delegation of European regions. It was a great pleasure to have it in Barcelona. And I would like just to focus my interview on highlighting the different points that we were focused on. We were working these days. The first one is more based on the current period, which is the lessons that we presented that for our site is the most important one to take in account. And in these key lessons, the first one, to succeed on this approach, relies on the coordination of all relevant stakeholders. It has said before, but it's so important at this level to foster this governance. And to foster this governance, we highlight and we presented the several dimensions. We presented several dimensions, not only based on the risk they are behind, also which is the main proposal or action plans that we are presenting and some recommendation for the different regions. The first of this dimension was the financial prioritization on projects receiving UF supporting. It says before, and I think it's quite important to be always on the top of prioritization when we are designing public budget. UF funding should be the first key of prioritizations. Also, not only in designing, also to choose or to be very close to operational monitoring to anticipate delays and implementation challenge. When we're talking about it, we are talking about try to pre-action instead of reactions. So we have presented the different guidelines, tools, also track process dashboards where interfere all the different stakeholders to make sure that they know exactly which is their role, also which is their great add value, and also in which moment of the procedure they have to interfere or to act. And also to educate administrative capacity of all management levels, as it says before previously, and also continuous legal support to make sure that not only in the design that legal support is there, also in implementation to make sure that at the end we reduce the risk of applying financial corrections in terms of public procurement. So continuous legal support is very important for us. And the second key lesson is also the importance to identify excellent projects for EU eco-financing. It requires a clear alignment between regional and UE priorities. And in this sense, I think STEP projects has proposal from European Union. I think it's a good example of this alignment. And in these states, regional government, Generalitat of Catalonia, are aligned or allocated huge money of our regional programs to focus in this strategic technology, make sure the regional strategic technology are accordance with this strategic technology from Europe. And the last point of this current period is identify the key components of strategic projects and determine how these can be structured or divided in order to optimize access for funding by target different goals, not only regional, also national, and foremost European goals. And the second day we focus on the future of regulatory framework. We were discussing the regulatory proposal, how can contribute to enhancing regional access to EU funding. And to highlight just the last 2 points, it's one upside, which is we are embracing very well, which is the single rule book that the European Commission wants to present it. I think it's a good way to simplification. But however, concerns were raising regarding the N+1 rule. It may incentive the selection of smaller and shorter projects with limited impact rather than strategic initiatives that require long-term strategic planning. that's in a nutshell what we want to present it today. Thank you. I think it was some problems with the camera, but I think at the end it's on. So thank you very much, and sorry for these problems. Thank you.
No issue at all, Teresa. Molto grazie. Thank you very much for this very comprehensive overview of what was done during the trip. I think one point that is particularly interesting, I think for us, is also this need for continuous legal support. We've heard about the risk of making a mistake and then having to reorganize a bit the project and having to spend a lot of resources in resolving those issues. So point taken on that, but many others that I'm sure that the regions learned. And I think who better to thank you actually than the regions that came to this trip. So I would like to give the floor to Mr. Guillaume Deleuze from the Brussels Capital Region, but speaking on behalf of all regions. He's the European Affairs Attaché, the Europe Department, and in Brussels International. Guillaume, the floor is yours. I'm assuming that Guillaume is having some problems with the mic. We're just gonna wait for a moment.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. We can hear you. Go ahead.
I just had a last minute issue. Okay, yeah, thank you very much. Dear colleagues, I have the privilege of speaking on behalf of the 4 regions, so Brussels region, Wallonia, Thuringia, and Silesia. And in that capacity, I would like to sincerely thank the authorities of Vizcaya and Catalonia for the warm welcome and the openness you showed during our study visit in January. Over a few intense days, you offered us a very concrete look at how your administrations help public authorities navigate EU programs. I must say that while we arrived thinking that Belgium was surely the most complex institutional system in Europe, after listening to you, we quickly realized that we were not alone in that category. Beyond that, of course, what stood out for all of us was the clarity of your strategic approach. Your teams, your tools, and your priorities are aligned, and it shows. By leveraging both local and European networks, you have successfully fostered a strong culture of European projects within your cities, your provinces, and your region. This is something we take home with us, and that will inspire our vision going forward. We were also impressed by your ability to make EU programs accessible to municipalities, regardless of the size or time. Many of our local administrations face similar issues, and seeing your solutions, dedicated teams, central coordinations, trainings, and targeted support was genuinely inspiring. Let me also thank the European Commission and in particular SG Reform and the TAIEX teams for coordinating everything so smoothly behind the scenes. One of the highlights of the visit was also the time we spent together as a delegation. The 4 regions quickly discovered how many challenges we share and how much we can learn from each other. Our discussions showed how aligned we are in our concerns about the next financial framework. In its current form, many of us fear that it could reduce our ability to access direct EU funds towards our regional needs. This only reinforces how important it is for a region like ours to stick together, to exchange more, and to strengthen our cooperation in the years ahead. The lessons from Vizcaya and Catalonia are already feeding into our reflections. How to structure our support systems more clearly, how to coordinate better internally, and how to prepare for the next programming period with a stronger, more strategic approach. So once again, thank you for your hospitality, for your honesty, and for your generosity with which you shared your experience. We hope this marks the beginning of a long-lasting cooperation, and we very much look forward to welcoming you in our regions soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Guillaume. Indeed, it's good to see that you've built a support group, especially in this uncertain moments. Thank you very much to the regions. Muchas gracias, es que ricasco. Thanks for everything. And now I would like to move to other countries that are also following this project quite closely. These are the ones that we call the observer countries. And I would like to give the floor. First, I would like to excuse Bosnia and Herzegovina, who had to leave because we are running a bit late. So apologies on her behalf. But we're going to go with Kosovo with Mr. Nushi. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. It is an honor to be part of this project when it comes to enhancing regional access to EU initiatives and funds. And I would like to thank the European Commission and OECD for producing a recommendation report, an action plan, as well as an implementation roadmap, especially when it comes to the 4 regions in Belgium, Poland, Germany, and Belgium again. So what we saw is that the challenges that arose from these 4 regions are almost similar challenges that Kosovo faces, especially when it comes to administrative capacities, network actors, and leadership. And we will hopefully in the future be part of these projects and be part of something that would try to resolve these challenges that we have. And I would like to thank again these 4 regions for showing us how what were the challenges and how they are planning to resolve it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nushi. Indeed, hopefully you'll be in these projects sometime soon. And then we're moving to Moldova. So I would like to give the floor to Ms. Mirzak.
Well, thank you to all participants for quite useful and impactful presentations. The experience of 4 involved regions is important for Moldova in accessing, absorption, and properly directing financing to cover priority needs, as well as to develop the less active regions. The resulting conclusions from participating regions will help Moldovan public administration to keep a complete overview on how to develop the entire country. At this stage, in Moldova has been initiated the local public administration reform in the form of voluntary amalgamation of municipalities. Also, the institutional architecture for the management of European funds is in the process of being completed. Considering this, all the presented recommendations are quite important, and I would like to mention actions like increasing the visibility of available European funds, increasing the capacity of stakeholders for EU funds accessing, using an inclusive language for all involved actors, a good leadership and coordination between actors. All these actions are needed to be implemented in Moldova as well. Individual action plans provide us strategies how the specific challenges can be informed. In this context, thank you again for involving us in this project and for the opportunity to access all the deliverables of the project.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mirzak. It's really good to hear that you're undergoing some reforms and that you're thinking also already about these issues that we've raised today in this call. So thank you very much for following the project closely. We'll continue to keep you informed. And we are now reaching the final phase of this call. We're slightly late, but very just a few minutes. I would like to open the floor in case there are any questions. You've received now a wealth of information for each of the regions, even collective information on EU funds, etc. For those listening, are there any questions that you would like to direct either to the OECD, to the regions? Do you have any questions? If you do, and you haven't posted them on the chat, feel free to raise your hand if you want to intervene orally. We'll wait for a few minutes. I don't see any in the chat. Just checking. It's true that it's been a lot of information, and it's also something that you need to also read specifically how the actions are framed. So we'll be sure to circulate the documents. I see there's a hand up. I see Mr. Borda. whenever you want, you can unmute yourself.
Ja, vielen Dank. Ich nutze auch mal die Chance.
Thank you a lot. I would like to take the opportunity to speak in German. A question to Mr. Hauser. The colleague from Barcelona talked about the single rule book that will be published in short time. Can you give us some more information about that one?
Es sei denn, Herr Hauser ist nicht mehr dabei.
I don't know if Mr. Hauser is still in the call.
Very question from you indeed. I think Hauser had to leave for another meeting. I don't know if the colleagues from the Commission have some more information, or if they want to refer you to Hauser. Nicole, Kathy.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Borde. I think I have to refer you because I'm thinking about the question and I can't answer it right away. So maybe would it be an idea just to do an exchange of email or a way of that I can really get you the right answer to that? So sorry, I can't answer that.
A very precise question. We'll make sure that we inquire a bit more about that, Mr. Borde.
Yeah.
Thank you. Are there any other questions in that surfaced your mind when we were presenting? We've talked about many similar challenges, and we've tried to give tailored recommendations to each regions. We know that there are several participants here from the different regions. How do you feel about those? Do you have any questions regarding those? You have the opportunity now. Otherwise, you'll have to refer to the written outputs. Okay. Given that there are no questions at the moment and that we're already a bit late, that allows us to close in time maybe. And last but really not least, I would like to give the floor now to Nicole, the policy officer of SG Reform, following this project very closely. Nicole, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Miguel, and I'll make it very short because we've talked a lot about the project with the regions and also with Spain and also with many of you here, because when I was looking at how many people were online, it was at a certain moment it was 100 people. So I think that's great to see this engagement. So we heard a lot. It's very pivotal. It's very current, this project. It really relates to what's going on at the moment, also at the Commission, and in the EU. But I want to come back on three very short points. You could say there's strategically things going on because we're shaping a governance that will have to face a new EU funding system, and it will be understanding how to absorb that, also understanding how to bring that forward. This is important in the new geopolitical situation, but also with the new MFF and the NRPPs, for those that don't know, the National Regional Partnership Plans. And I think there's a lot going on at the same time. So it's very important to also think strategically, where are you at the moment? What are the steps you want to take forward? And going forward, that means what would you do? So you align with EU priorities, but also you align in your own countries as regions. And in that sense, it's very pivotal. More on a tactical level, what I liked a lot, what I heard, is that you're getting all these discussions on different levels. So you're getting a political commitment or discussions, you're administrative, you're looking at your stakeholders. When I was in one of or two or three of the workshops, it was incredibly interesting to see what the stakeholders, what kind of questions they had, because that also means that you are engaging with the stakeholders, and that's very on a tactical level. Operational, I'm already seeing many of the recommendations that are, at least I was looking at the tables and I saw 80% at a certain moment. I thought, oh, there's really recommendations that are already being taken into account, and there are already things being done on a very operational level and also being tested. So sometimes it's not only doing it, but also testing it as a pilot and finding out if these things are workable. And so I see commitment being developed and through this project, and it's also about fostering a culture of collaboration, anticipation, and preparedness. And I think that's what we do also in this project. We practice what we preach. So we are also collaborating with as many people as possible. We're anticipating on a new situation which everybody has a piece of the puzzle of. So we have to lay this puzzle, and we're being prepared for the next steps to go forward. And I think what I liked, what Dorothee and also I think my colleague Florian kind of mentioned, is that it's about realization, but also of ambition. So it's not about only realizing something, but also saying, okay, we have to think about innovative things and going forward on ambition. So I'm not going to say that much more. I'm just going to thank a lot of people because first of all, the presenters of today, the different regions, I'm very, very happy that you're there. And I'm also really hearing a lot of nice words, so that's really good to hear. I also see that there's a lot of challenges in this subject, so that is also a way forward to work on that again, more I mean, because this project is not over yet. So thank you for your enthusiasm and everything. The OECD, thanks a lot, guys, for the expertise and the steering of all the different workshops and developing all the different reports. And really, thanks a lot for steering this project with so much knowledge. And the Spanish regions. I know it's always really interesting to get a group of people into your own administration and talk about your own administration and learn from each other. And the peer learning is something that was in this project, and I still think that's something that is very important on this topic, that the regions keep in touch with each other to do the steps forward, because the new MFF is for everybody new. Also internally at the Commission, we're also thinking about what does that really mean? What does that mean for the people? What is the work that's going to be there? What is the work that's not going to be there anymore? How does who does what and where? There's a lot of discussion at the same time as well. So, and I really want to actually one person I really want to thank, and that's Kati. She's here now. She's like she's always a beacon in the back, but she's done a lot of work for this project, and thanks a lot, Kati. So thanks a lot, everybody. I think that's for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nicole, and Kathy as well. Thanks very much for all the support and the trust with this project. I don't have much more to say. You've heard about me all during 2 hours, so I think I'll make it short. Just say that this project is for me very timely. I think this gives us the 4 regions really an advantage in this uncertain moment. So really, let's make the most of it. It's very strategic, but it's also applicable to other regions. So I'm really happy that we managed to have Spanish regions today, but also we will seek to expand in the next phase of the project. We will have, as Nicole was saying, this is not over. We still have capacity building activities, and we will have also an event on EU funds, which you will hear more details about. But definitely the idea is also to have more regions and to have more perspectives in this at this time. So thank you very much to the regions for their real commitment to work on these issues. Thank you to the European Commission, of course, for their trust, and also, if you allow me, thank you to the OECD team for their support as well, and for accompanying me in the coordination of this project. So thank you very much. And with this, I wish you a very good day. See you.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.